How is a 300-person ghost hunt in a cemetery in the 1880s connected to the murder of a man at a factory almost a decade later? And who is the mystery child buried secretly in the cemetery in the middle of the night? Alton, Illinois. It's considered one of the most haunted towns in America, and some say there's a curse in the greater Riverbend area. But for all the known haunted locations throughout the town, there are even more hauntings and ghost stories that have been lost to time. Haunted Road Media's investigative team, Society of the Haunted, has taken on a project to uncover and explore these lost ghost stories, using the haunted Mineral Springs Hotel as a base of operations. In this haunted town, they have uncovered several forgotten secrets.
This is essentially going to be our war room for this series of investigations that we are conducting on exploring lost hauntings of Alton, Illinois.
Of places that are kind of off the beaten path, not the usual tour spots. This is actually an opportunity for people to discover some new places.
These ghosts and hauntings were actually reported in the local newspaper. December 1881. The sleepy Alton Cemetery, known as Milton, the last remnants of a town long since gone, was suddenly awoken. Thursday, the 15th. Reported in the Alton Telegraph. A first-class ghost sensation is now exciting the people. It is currently reported that the mysterious fraternity has lately been seen in an adjoining graveyard. His ghostship only appears to single individuals seeming to be troubled with a diffidence that impels him to avoid a crowd. Some individuals, however, have been scared out of a year's growth and state that the spook is no humbug. Friday the 16th, the Alton Evening Telegraph. The Altonians, with unheard of valor, went within sight of the haunted spot, and at about 10 o'clock were rewarded with a view of the mysterious being. It appeared to them as a man clothed in a black mantle with long flowing hair, the height of the ghost ranging from 6 to 9 feet, according to the magnifying power of the bulging eyes that stared at it, the company being speechless through amazement. One of the railroad employees at the junction visited the haunted spot a few nights ago, saw the apparition, and bravely approaching it, thrust his arm directly through its body. This completely unnerved him, and he retreated to the junction, pale as the traditional ghost. The old residents assert that the apparition is that of a man buried on the knoll in 1839.
We're here at the Milton Cemetery, the last remnant of the Milton settlement. The area where it now is East Alton, but there was a town here a long time ago that most of the inhabitants were decimated by a cholera epidemic and were buried here. So, however, we don't know where those graves are.
As most old cemeteries happen, there's either stones that are lost, there's stones that are broken, there's stones that are, you can't read the writing on them anymore, and some may not have even been marked at all.
In the past, during the 1800s, there were a lot of reports of ghosts being sighted here, to the point where 300 people at one time en masse came down to check out what was going on.
Wednesday, the 21st. About 10 o'clock, one of the number looked over the ground and beheld a sight that caused each individual bristle to stand erect on his head, like the quills of a frightened porcupine. About 20 paces off stood a form 8 feet high, with a long white beard and tremendous eyes, big as a couple of holes burned in a blanket. The veterans rose to their feet. A few ineffectual shots from their revolvers were fired, and as the apparition glided toward them, its footsteps silent as the grave, the bravest of them took to flight. Thursday, the 22nd. A crowd, estimated at over 300, went to the haunted graveyard last week, resolved to fully investigate the matter. They were like an army with banners, except they had numerous torches and lanterns instead. The company made a great deal of noise, some even using unseemingly disrespectful language in respect to the ghost. Consequently, that individual did not appear, although the hunters crowded the place until after 12 o'clock, the witching hour when graves are supposed to yawn and give up their sheeted dead.
300 people is a lot of people to check out. In order to get 300 people to gather anywhere, there has to be something important going on.
That's a hell of a public ghost hunt.
Yeah.
Who the ghost was that haunted Milton Cemetery was never discovered. Could it have been the ghost of John Milton, the presumed first person buried on the land in 1812? Maybe one of the victims of the Wood River Massacre laid to rest there? Or was it one of the victims of the cholera epidemic in 1849? The town was lost, but some years before it had been, a tavern keeper in Milton named Joel Bacon passed away, and when he did, his large house was disassembled and reconstructed in Upper Alton by future state senator George Smith. Keep that in mind. 26 years later, another ghost was reportedly seen just down the road at the glassworks, which no longer exists. Today, it's just barren land. From the June 28, 1907 edition of the Alton Evening Telegraph. The glassworks has a ghost, according to one of the night watchmen, who reports having seen his ghost ship flitting around the yards from one house to another, frequently of late. The ghost never enters any of the houses or furnace rooms, possibly because it is hot enough for him where he comes from, and he is desirous of a change. A sneering skeptic says it is, in all probability, Dr. Cornelia DeBay of Chicago, the woman physician who jumped the 10-foot fence in hopes she might find violations of the child labor law. In the 1890s, the Illinois Glassworks, as well as other manufacturers throughout the state, were highly criticized for the use of child labor until regulation laws were put in place. But Dr. Cornelia DeBay, who fought hard against child labor and for women's rights, didn't pass away until 1948. So if the sneering skeptic is wrong about the ghost being DeBay, a ghost that was seen multiple times, who could it have been? Rewind to 1895 when trouble went down in the Illinois Glassworks. In a dispute between two factorymen, Frederick Crow and Surrey Sharp, over whether a girl had been insulted, Crow challenged Sharp to a fight in the grinding room. Instead of fighting, Sharp, who had been warned he was going to get jumped, brandished a .38 caliber revolver and shot Crow dead. At first, Sharp fired a warning shot into the roof, but as Crow backed out into the yard in which the ghost would be seen 12 years later, Sharp fired again, this time killing the young man. Sharp ran and was later apprehended and convicted. Frederick Crow's corpse, however, was taken to his mother's house on Union Street. The family hadn't been notified of the tragedy, and the family was mortified when Frederick's deceased body was brought into the house. But back to our Milton Cemetery story and the house that George Smith moved from the town that no longer exists. We've come across a reference stating that his daughter later stayed in his house on Union near Liberty. Did we just find a possible connection between these two ghost stories? Was the murdered body of Frederick Crow taken to where the last remaining structure from Milton rests? Or at least near it? But Milton Cemetery isn't done with its secrets. Almost exactly 34 years after the ghost sightings in Milton Cemetery, the following was discovered in December 1915. The directors of the Milton Cemetery in East Alton are worrying over the appearance of a new-made grave in the cemetery, which, as far as can be learned by investigation, has not been authorized by anyone. The grave is a small one and is made on the lot owned by the heirs of William Cole. None of the members of the Cole family know anything about the burial. It appears someone must have slipped into the cemetery at night and buried the body. After initially deciding to exhume the grave, cemetery officials decided to leave it be, and it was never mentioned again. To this day, no one knows who the small body is that's buried near the grave of William Cole.
It may just be because of him. Step, like right here.
Like right there?
Yes.
You're not getting it back there? Could be. It could be that the child is buried there.
It doesn't matter which way I come in, but it's just this one spot.
It's that one spot. Interesting.
After we found out what we found out, I started, since it's an unmarked grave where, this child just got dumped, basically. No idea what the connection is here to this person, but I just kind of started walking around the area and like here in the road and over there, just everywhere, and then basically put a stick in the ground because where I stepped or where I was standing at was where I could feel some energy that I didn't feel in any of the other spots. So I put a stick in the ground. And do I know for sure that that's where this child is buried? No, I don't know 100% for sure, but without digging, there's really no way to know. But this is where I feel that something is going on.
These are but a few of the lost ghost stories of haunted Alton, Illinois. And if you're interested in learning more, please check out our other Haunted Alton videos off to the side. I'm Mike Ricksecker. Until next Friday night.